If you have ever played the survival horror masterpiece Signalist, or watched the first season of True Detective, then you have already felt the cold touch of the king. You have seen his shadow in the cosmic madness of Elden Ring, and the twisted ink of World of Horror. This is the book that birthed the concept of a story so dangerous that just reading it can rot your soul. In 1895, Robert W. Chambers released a collection of tales that suggested our reality is just a thin veil over a much older and much darker universe. The centerpiece of these stories is a forbidden play bound in yellow silk. The first act is a beautiful dream of romance and royalty that lulls you into a sense of security. But the moment you turn the page to the second act, the words act like a literal virus for the human mind. Your sanity begins to leak out like water from a cracked jar. You start to see the city of Carcosa, where black stars hang in the sky, and two suns sink into the silent lake of Hali. You see the pallid mask, which is a face that is not a face, but a hollow expression hiding something far worse than death. And then you see the yellow sign. It is a symbol that once burned into your memory can never be forgotten. It marks you as a subject of the king in yellow, who does not want to kill you, but wants to invite you to a masquerade that never ends. H.P. Lovecraft was so terrified by this idea that he integrated the king into his own Cthulhu mythos as a god of madness. The stories in this book follow the artists and the lonely souls who dared to look at the play and found themselves trapped in a nightmare world. They lose their names and their memories, and eventually their very existence to the king. It is the ultimate cursed media, because it suggests that some truths are not meant for human eyes. If you stumble upon a copy of a play that makes the world feel cold, and the shadows feel too long, do yourself a favor and walk away. Because once you have seen the yellow sign, the invitation is already accepted, and the king is already standing right behind you. In 1920, the US government opened the first lethal chamber, a public place where anyone could legally end their life. But that's not even the weirdest part of this story. Meet Hildred Custany. After a head injury and reading a band play called The King in Yellow, he's convinced he isn't just a regular guy. He's the rightful heir to the last king of America. He teams up with the repairer of reputations, a terrifying man named Mr. Wilde, who lives in a literal human spiderweb of blackmail and secrets. Together, they're planning a bloody coup to seize the throne and force the world to bow. Hildred even has his imperial crown locked in a safe, waiting for the moment of his coronation. But here's the kicker. The imperial crown is actually just a cheap toy made of tinsel and colored glass. To the world, Hildred is a delusional maniac destined for an asylum. To Hildred, the world is just too blind to see the yellow sign. Whatever you do, don't read the play. Imagine sitting in a massive, ancient cathedral in Paris. You're there to find peace. But the organ music isn't soothing, it's wrong. The notes are clashing, screaming, and digging into your brain like a physical weight. You look up at the organ loft and see him, a man with a pale, expressionless face staring directly at you with eyes that feel like they're stripping away your soul. You've seen this man before. You don't know where, but you know he hates you with a hatred that isn't human. Terrified, you bolt out of the church and into the crowded streets of Paris. You try to lose him in the bustle of the city, ducking into shops and turning down side alleys. But every time you look over your shoulder, there he is, always at the same distance, always walking with that slow, deliberate pace. You finally make it back to your apartment and bolt the door, gasping for air, convinced you're safe. You sink into your chair and try to convince yourself it was just a hallucination. But then, the shadows in the corner of the room begin to stretch. The walls of your room start to melt away, and instead of your apartment, you're standing in a desolate, alien landscape under the light of two black suns. The man from the church is standing right in front of you now. He whispers that he has been waiting for you since the beginning of time. You realize that the Court of the Dragon isn't a place in Paris. It's a place beyond our stars. The King in Yellow has claimed you and there is nowhere left in the universe to hide. Imagine a world where liquid gold can turn living things into stone. Paris, 1890s. An artist named Boris discovers a chemical pool that instantly transforms anything it touches into pure, white marble. It's the ultimate artistic cheat code, but there's a catch. Boris is in a tense love triangle with his friend, Alec, and a woman named Genevieve. One day, Genevieve falls ill with a mysterious fever, and in a moment of pure waking nightmare, she stumbles. She falls directly into the chemical pool. Alec watches in horror as the woman he loves becomes a cold, lifeless statue forever. Grief-stricken, Boris eventually takes his own life, leaving Alec alone with the beautiful, stony ghost of their past. But then the world shifts. The King in Yellow play is mentioned, the atmosphere rots, and suddenly, the marble, Genevieve, begins to flush with color. Her fingers twitch. The transformation is reversing. She's alive, but at what cost? In this world, beauty isn't a gift, it's a trap. And once you've seen the yellow sign, even a miracle feels like a curse. Imagine you are a successful artist in New York, living in a studio that feels safe, until you look out your window. Every night, sitting on a hearse in the street below, is a man who looks like a living corpse. His skin is a puffy, nightmare white like a fungus, and his eyes are completely dead. He doesn't just watch you, he waits for you. One night, you hear a scratching at your door. It isn't a knock, it's the sound of soft, wet fingers fumbling against the wood. You realize the hearse driver from the street has come upstairs. You try to ignore the dread by focusing on your model, Tessie. She finds a strange black onyx clasp in a junk shop and gives it to you as a gift. It's beautiful, but it's engraved with a symbol you've never seen before, a twisting, golden character that seems to move when you aren't looking. That night, you both have the same dream. You're lying in a coffin and the hearse driver is leaning over you, whispering, "Have you found the yellow sign?" You wake up in a cold sweat, but the nightmare doesn't end. You realize the onyx clasp is the yellow sign. By owning it, by seeing it, you've opened a door that can never be shut. The lights in your studio begin to flicker and die. You hear those wet, heavy footsteps coming down the hallway again. There is no lock strong enough to keep him out. As the door slowly creaks open, you realize the man isn't just a stalker. He's a messenger from a city called Carcosa, and he's come to collect the soul of anyone who dared to look at the sign. The story ends with a scream that echoes through the halls, leaving nothing behind but the smell of decay and a piece of black onyx glinting in the dark. Imagine you're out hunting, but the fog rolls in so thick that the world disappears. You're hopelessly lost. Just as panic starts to set in, you stumble upon a massive, ancient castle that shouldn't be there. Standing at the gates is a beautiful woman named Jean. She's dressed in clothes from centuries ago, and she carries a falcon on her wrist like a medieval queen. She welcomes you in, and for the first time in your life, you feel a connection that defies logic. You spend days wandering the sun-drenched gardens with her. The air smells of strange flowers, and the world outside the fog feels like a distant, fading memory. You're falling in love, and she looks at you as if you're the only soul left in existence. But there's a creeping dread beneath the beauty. Jean mentions people and events that have been dead for hundreds of years. She speaks of the King in Yellow as if he's a looming shadow just over the horizon. One afternoon, while you're resting in the grass, a venomous viper strikes. You feel the bite, the world turns cold, and you black out. When you finally wake up, the sun is gone. The castle is gone. The gardens are gone. You're lying in the middle of a ruin, covered in weeds and cracked stones. Beside you is a weathered, crumbling tombstone. You wipe away the moss and read the name engraved in the rock. Jean Dees. She's been dead for 400 years. You realize that the yellow sign doesn't just break your mind, it breaks time itself. You didn't find a castle. You wandered into a ghost story. And now you're trapped in a mourning that will last the rest of your life. You're staring at a sequence of disconnected, beautiful, and terrifying moments. Each one feels like a different room in a palace that shouldn't exist. One moment, you're watching a woman named Truth try to wash her hands in a fountain. but the water turns to blood the moment she touches it. The air is thick with the smell of heavy incense and decaying lilies. You hear voices whispering about the pallid mask in the Lake of Hali, but when you turn to see who's speaking, there's only a mirror reflecting a face that isn't yours. In another scene, a phantom is trying to find his way home, but every road he takes leads back to the same black balcony, overlooking a city of silent chimneys. The sun is white and cold and the shadows don't move with the light. It feels like you've stepped inside the mind of someone who has actually read the forbidden play. The king in yellow and survived, but their sanity didn't. There is a recurring figure of a jester who laughs at the concept of love and death, mocking the prophets who think they understand the universe. He tells you that the only thing that's real is the yellow sign, and everything else, your memories, your pain, your life is just a costume you're wearing for a play that never ends. By the time you reach the final lines, the text begins to loop. It pulls you into a cycle of beautiful despair, where time has no meaning, and the king is always coming. It's the bridge between the real world of the earlier stories and the pure, cosmic madness that follows. Severine is an artist living in a cramped, dusty attic. He's a man who has spent years waiting for a woman named Sylvia to return to him, a love he lost long ago. One winter night, as the wind howls through the narrow streets, a cat appears at his door. It's a magnificent white creature with fur as soft as silk. It doesn't act like a stray. It walks into his room with a regal confidence, as if it owns the space. Severin notices something strange immediately. Tied around the cat's neck is a scrap of expensive silken lace, the kind of fabric Sylvia used to wear. The cat leads him across the hall to a room that has been locked and abandoned for years. Driven by a mix of hope and terror, Severin breaks the seal. He expects to find an empty room, but instead he finds a shrine. The air is heavy with the scent of dried violets. Every piece of furniture is covered in white dust, but everything is perfectly in place, as if someone just stepped out for a moment. On the table sits a portrait of a woman. It's Sylvia. He realizes the cat didn't just find him, it brought him home. But as he reaches out to touch the portrait, the cat lets out a low, mourning cry that sounds almost human. Severin looks toward the bed in the corner. There, beneath a heavy shroud of dust and lace, lies the figure of a woman. She is perfectly still, her skin as white as the cat's fur. She hasn't moved in years. He finally found Sylvia, but the city of Paris had kept her a secret until the Four Winds decided it was time for him to know the truth. The story ends with him sitting in the dark, realizing that some things are lost not because they are gone, but because they're waiting for us in the places we're too afraid to look. Imagine the sound of distant thunder that never stops. But it's not a storm. It's the Prussian army surrounding the city, raining iron and fire onto the cobblestone streets. You're living in a cramped studio with a group of artists who are trying to pretend the world isn't ending. You spend your days painting and your nights listening to the shells whistle overhead. Among you is a man named Jack Trent. He's in love with a girl named Sylvia, not the Sylvia from the last story, but a living, breathing woman caught in the crossfire. The tension in the city is rotting everyone's nerves. People are starving. The cats and dogs have disappeared from the streets. Trust is a luxury no one can afford. One day, a rumor starts to spread. There's a spy in the neighborhood. Someone is signaling the enemy. Someone is helping the shells find their targets. Jack becomes obsessed. He watches the rooftops. He watches his friends. He starts to see patterns in the way the shadows move at night. Then, the first shell finally hits your street. The explosion doesn't just shatter windows. It shatters the illusion of safety. In the smoke and the screaming, Jack finds a trail of blood leading back to his own building. He follows it, heart hammering against his ribs, expecting to find a monster. Instead, he finds the cost of war. The King in Yellow isn't a supernatural monster in this chapter. He is the spirit of despair that hangs over a dying city. By the time the smoke clears, Jack realizes that the real horror isn't the enemy outside the walls. It's the way the fear turns neighbors into hunters and lovers, into ghosts before the bullets even fly. Picture a young American named Hastings who has just moved to the Latin Quarter. He is an artist who sees the world through a lens of pure innocence and golden light. He thinks he has found a paradise of creativity. He is completely unaware of the gritty and desperate reality of the bohemian lifestyle. Then he meets a girl named Valentine. She works in a quiet flower shop and wears a simple black dress that makes her look like a saint hiding in plain sight. Hastings falls for her with a sudden and overwhelming intensity. He treats her like a goddess who has descended into the mud of the city. He's convinced that she is the only pure thing in a Paris that is slowly rotting with decadence and secrets. But the people around him start to whisper. His friends have lived in the quarter long enough to see the mask slip. They try to warn him that, in this part of town, innocence is not a virtue. It is a currency. They know the names of the girls who spend their nights dancing at the Bal Boulier. They know that Valentine is not the angel he has created in his mind. Hastings refuses to hear them. He builds his entire world around his version of her. The tension in the story isn't about ghosts or monsters. It is the slow and agonizing death of a young man's illusions. When the truth finally breaks through, it does not come with a scream. It comes with a quiet and hollow realization. He learns that Valentine has a past that he can never reconcile with the saint he loves. The King in Yellow does not appear as a physical being in this chapter. He is the shadow of the city itself. He is the quiet despair that follows when you realize your idols are just as broken as you are. The story ends with a bittersweet walk through the misty streets. Hastings accepts that he can still love her, but the version of her he worshipped is dead. There is a street in the heart of Paris that you will never find on any map. It is called the Rue Barrée, or the Street of the Barred Gate. It is a place where the sun seems to hit the stones differently, and the shadows feel just a little too long. Our protagonist is an American artist named Selby, who lives in a state of constant and beautiful distraction. He is part of a rowdy group of painters who spend their nights drinking and their days chasing a perfection they can never quite reach. Every single day at the exact same hour, a woman walks past his studio window. She never looks up and she never speaks. Selby becomes obsessed with her because she is the only mystery left in the city that has already seen everything. He calls her the girl of the Rue Barrée, and he begins to build a private religion around her silence. His friends mock him and tell him to just go outside and talk to her, but Selby is terrified. He's afraid that if he touches the dream will shatter. The atmosphere of the city starts to shift as the heat of the summer settles in. The laughter of the artist starts to sound a bit more hollow and desperate. The music from the cafes starts to sound like the clashing and discordant notes of the King in Yellow play. One night, the wall finally breaks down. Selby follows her through the narrow and twisting alleys until he finally corners her in the moonlight. He expects a goddess, or a ghost, or a terrifying warning from the lost city of Carcosa. Instead, he finds a girl who is just as lonely and just as humanly lost as he is. They share a moment of pure connection that feels more surreal than any nightmare. But as the sun rises, the magic of the street begins to fade away. The gate is barred once again, and the mystery is replaced by a heavy and quiet reality. You realize that the real tragedy isn't the monsters hiding under the bed. It is the way we use our obsessions to hide from the living, people standing right in front of us. In the end, the King in Yellow doesn't need to steal your soul. He just needs to make sure you never truly see the world as it really is.